I didn't expect it to end this way, but I'll never forget what he said. Even now, when I close my eyes at night, I can still hear the echo of his voice, that raw, unfiltered truth spoken in a moment when everything we thought we knew about life shifted. His words weren't rehearsed, weren't polished, and weren't what I wanted to hear at the time. But they were exactly what I needed. My name is Emily Carter, and this story begins long before that moment. It starts in a small town in Ohio, where life was simple, predictable, and safe. I grew up there with my older brother, Daniel, and my best friend since childhood, Michael. Daniel was the responsible one, the one who always seemed older than his years, while I was the dreamer who scribbled in notebooks and spent evenings staring at the stars. Michael, though, was something in between, a balance neither Daniel nor I could ever manage on our own. He was our anchor, the person who made the air lighter just by walking into a room. The three of us were inseparable as kids. Summers were spent riding bikes until the streetlights flickered on, daring each other to race down the steepest hills, or sneaking into the creek behind Mrs. Peterson's farm. Winters meant sledding on borrowed trash can lids and hot cocoa made too sweet with too much sugar. Back then, everything seemed infinite, like time was on our side and nothing could ever touch us. But life has a way of proving us wrong. After high school, Daniel enlisted in the Army. He always said he wanted to see the world, to do something bigger than himself. I stayed behind, enrolling at the local community college and picking up part-time shifts at the bookstore downtown. Michael, though, was torn. He had dreams of leaving, of chasing music in Nashville, but he also felt responsible for me, like he needed to stick around and look out for the girl he'd known since she wore braces and pigtails. I'll never forget the night he came to my porch, guitar slung over his shoulder, and told me he was leaving. "Just for a while, Em," he said. "If I don't try, I'll regret it forever." His voice cracked just enough for me to know he was scared, but his eyes carried that same determined spark I'd seen when we were kids daring each other to jump from the highest rock into the creek. I told him to go, that I believed in him, that Nashville didn't know what was about to hit it. I smiled, but when he hugged me goodbye, I felt the first pang of something I couldn't quite name at the time. For a while, life carried on. Daniel sent letters from bases overseas, his handwriting as steady as his spirit. Michael called when he could, sometimes from tiny apartments filled with other dreamers, sometimes from the back of crowded bars where he played sets no one was really listening to. And me, I buried myself in my studies, in work, in pretending that the hole their absence left in my life wasn't as heavy as it felt. Years passed in a blur. Daniel came home for visits, leaner and quieter than before, though his laugh was still the same. Michael returned every few months too, sometimes with songs he'd written, sometimes with stories of close calls and doors slammed in his face. Every time he came back, it felt like a piece of me was restored, only to be pulled away again when he left. It wasn't until my mid-20s that I finally admitted to myself what I had been too afraid to see earlier. I loved him. Not in the childhood sense of being inseparable friends, but in the way that felt bone-deep, unshakable, and terrifying. He wasn't just Michael, the boy from across the street. He was Michael, the man whose voice could silence a room, whose kindness could disarm the hardest heart, and whose presence made me feel seen in a world that often overlooked me. I never told him. Maybe I was afraid of ruining what we had, or maybe I thought he already knew. After all, how could something so obvious not be written all over me? Then came the day that changed everything. It was late summer when Daniel got the call to return overseas. He tried to downplay it, but I saw the weight in his eyes, the way he hugged me tighter than usual before he left. A week later, Michael showed up at my door unannounced, looking exhausted but smiling that familiar smile. "Figured I'd check in on you," he said. "Can't let you run the world all by yourself." We spent that evening on the porch, the air thick with cicadas and the smell of cut grass. We talked about everything and nothing, about his latest gigs, about my classes, about Daniel's deployment. There was laughter, but underneath it, a quietness I couldn't shake. Like he was carrying something he wasn't ready to say. And then it happened. The news came 2 months later. Daniel's unit had been ambushed. My brother, my protector, my constant, was gone. Just like that. I don't remember much about those days that followed. The blur of casseroles dropped off by neighbors, the endless stream of condolences that sounded the same no matter who said them, the sharp, hollow ache that refused to ease. It felt like the world had tilted off its axis, and no one knew how to set it right again. Michael never left my side. He sat through the silence, through the sobs, through the nights when I couldn't bring myself to get out of bed. He held my hand at the funeral, his grip steady even as my knees nearly gave way. He spoke to people when I couldn't, made arrangements when I was too numb to care, and somehow, in the middle of my grief, kept me tethered to the world. It was a week after the funeral when he finally said the words that would stay with me forever. We were sitting in my living room, the light dim, the air heavy with the scent of flowers that had already started to wilt. I remember staring at the folded flag on the mantel, the one handed to my mother with solemn precision, when Michael's voice cut through the stillness. "Em," he said, his tone lower than I'd ever heard it, "I need you to hear me right now, because I don't know if I'll ever get the courage to say it again." I turned toward him, my face swollen from crying, my heart so tired it barely beat. He took a deep breath. "I know this isn't the right time. I know you're hurting in a way I can't fix. But I can't keep pretending. You've been my best friend since we were kids, but it's always been more than that for me. I love you, Emily. I've loved you for as long as I can remember. And if I never said it, I'd regret it for the rest of my life." Silence stretched between us, heavy and fragile. My throat closed, my mind scrambled for words, but none came. I just stared at him, at the boy who had grown into a man, at the man who had been my anchor when I was adrift. He didn't push. He didn't demand. He just sat there, his eyes steady on mine, as if he'd finally unburdened something that had lived inside him for years. "I don't expect you to say anything," he whispered. "Not now. Maybe not ever. I just needed you to know. Because life doesn't give us guarantees. And if Daniel's death taught me anything, it's that we can't waste time pretending we don't feel what we feel." That was it. That was what he said. And though so much has changed since that night, I'll never forget it. In that moment, I didn't give him the response he deserved. I couldn't. My grief was too raw, my heart too shattered to hold anything else. But those words burrowed deep inside me, waiting for the day I could face them.